He walked onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent wearing a borrowed suit, carrying a decade's worth of rejection, and a strategy that most contestants never think to build. He was not a fresh-faced teenager with a dream and a grandmother's blessing. He was a 27-year-old Filipino singer who had already failed on national television once, walked away from a recording deal, carried plates for 2 years in a Scottish restaurant, and spent months studying the man sitting behind that judging desk before he ever opened his mouth to sing. What happened next? 2 golden buzzers, a grand final performance, and a 4th-place finish that set Filipino social media alight, was not luck. It was the end product of a decade of quiet, relentless rebuilding. But the story that got him there is far more complicated, far more human, and far more interesting than any 4-minute clip on YouTube will ever manage to show you. This is what really happened to Matty Juniosa. Matty Juniosa was born and raised in Quezon City, in the Philippines, but his childhood was shaped less by a single place than by a constant state of motion. His family relocated frequently during his formative years, moving through Mandaluyong, Zamboanga, Tawi-Tawi, and Cavite before eventually settling in Taguig ahead of his secondary school years. That last move is the kind of detail that gets edited out of most profiles, but it carries real weight if you understand Philippine geography. Tawi-Tawi sits at the extreme southern edge of the Philippine archipelago, far from Manila's entertainment industry and its cultural pipeline of talent competitions and television contracts. For a Catholic boy who would one day perform on a British stage before millions, growing up partly in that corner of the country meant his sense of identity was already stitched together from radically different worlds before he ever entered his first competition. What traveled with him through every move was his voice. He had been singing for anyone willing to listen since the age of 5. By the time he reached St. Paul College of Makati for secondary school, music had stopped being something he did and had started being something he was. He joined the school choir, Musica Polinos, and began competing in vocal contests across Metro Manila. People who knew him during those years have described him as the kind of student who could not stop performing even between competitions, organizing impromptu showcases for his classmates in school hallways simply to keep his instrument active. After graduating, he enrolled at De La Salle University, where he sang with the university's premier vocal performance ensemble and learned, for the first time, what a serious stage with a serious audience actually demanded of a performer. He graduated in 2018 and stood at the same crossroads that swallows most talented young Filipinos whole, the safe path or the uncertain dream. He chose the dream, fully, and without a safety net. Within a year, that decision led him to the audition stage of the inaugural season of Idol Philippines. The first season of Idol Philippines aired in 2019 on a major Philippine network, and by any measure it was a significant cultural event. The judging panel included Regine Velasquez, one of the most decorated voices in the history of Philippine pop music, alongside chart-topping singer-songwriter Moira de la Torre. Thousands of singers auditioned across the country, and only 69 of them received golden tickets to advance past the audition rounds. Matty was one of those 69. He made it all the way through to the top 12 live shows. For the competition's first live elimination round, every finalist was required to perform a song by legendary Filipino composer Ryan Cayabyab, who personally mentored each contestant ahead of the broadcast. The scoring system divided the final result evenly between the judging panel and public voting, which meant your recognition outside the competition mattered almost as much as your performance within it. Matty, at 20 years old, had no fan army and no viral clip driving votes his way. When the first live elimination results were announced, Matty received the lowest combined score of all 12 finalists, 50.5%, and was sent home on the very first night of the live rounds. Zephany Di Chaves, who would eventually win the entire competition, watched him leave. In interviews following the elimination, Matty was honest about what had gone wrong. His television persona had not translated in the way he needed it to. But underneath the composed analysis was something much rawer, a genuine belief, written across his face in every clip from that night, that his shot at a music career had just ended in front of his entire country. He could not have known that 2 very different chapters still lay ahead of him, one in the Philippines and one far colder and wetter. Within weeks of his elimination, the same network that had sent him home brought him back. Producers paired him with 2 other Idol Philippines finalists, runner-up Lucas Garcia, and top 20 finalist Enzo Almerio, to form an all-male vocal trio called Idols. For a young performer who had just been voted off live national television with the competition's lowest score, this was a kind of second chance that most singers in his position never receive. Idols began appearing on Philippine variety television, building a small but loyal following through cover performances and original material. In 2020, all three members released solo singles simultaneously under the same major Filipino music label. Matty's track, Sa'yo Na Talaga, told the story of a person quietly carrying a long-held love for someone else. It was his first real moment as a credited solo recording artist, and he has described the feeling of releasing something with his own name on it, after a year of being publicly told he was the worst of the top 12, as life-changing. The group continued to perform together across Philippine television, including appearances on the Filipino editions of It's Showtime and Your Face Sounds Familiar, where all three performed a tribute to the rock supergroup made famous by Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting. In 2021, they released a single called Kapangarahan, which became among their most recognized songs. And here is the detail that almost no one outside the Philippines knows. That song, recorded by a group formed after Matty was eliminated first from a national singing competition, was later selected as the final lip-sync track for the Season 2 finale of Drag Race Philippines, one of the most-watched drag competition programs across the whole of Southeast Asia. The voice that had received the lowest score in the top 12 just 2 years earlier ended up scoring the climactic moment of an entire continent's queer pop culture milestone. And just as Idols was finally building real momentum, Matty quietly told his bandmates he was leaving the Philippines. In 2022, Idols officially disbanded. The reason, which Matty gave plainly, was that he had been offered a partial scholarship by the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland to study for a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in musical theatre, and he intended to take it. According to reporting by Philstar.com and GMA Entertainment, Matty relocated to Glasgow that year, exchanging a working recording career, a major label deal, and a country where his name was finally being recognized for a program that would strip everything back to zero. He has explained in interviews that the move was driven by something he could not shake, the persistent internal voice telling him he would always be the loser of every singing competition he entered. The only way to silence it, he concluded, was to begin completely from scratch in a place where nobody knew his name, in a curriculum that would force him to become something more than just a singer. What he landed in was considerably harder than what he had planned for. Glasgow gave him a partial scholarship, not a full one, which meant he needed income to stay afloat. He took a part-time job as a waiter, moving between a restaurant kitchen and a full schedule of acting classes, dance training, vocal coaching, and rehearsals at the conservatoire. In one of the more candid interviews from that period, he described his first year in Scotland as simultaneously the hardest and the most fulfilling year he had ever lived through. The cold was new. The accent was new. The food was new. The loneliness of being one of very few Filipino students in his program was new. And threading through all of it was the constant pressure of knowing that if he failed out, there was nothing guaranteed to go back to. He kept going. He auditioned for every theater role the conservatoire would let him try for. By the time he graduated, Philstar reports his graduation as 2025, with other sources indicating 2024, he had performed at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, taken on roles in significant musicals including Kinky Boots and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and assembled a genuine body of stage work that most musical theater graduates spend years trying to build. Then, diploma in hand, student visa ticking down, he went back to waiting tables. Because that is what the overwhelming majority of musical theater graduates actually do. Somewhere between his graduation and the audition tape he eventually submitted to Britain's Got Talent, Matty Juniosa stopped thinking like a contestant and started thinking like a researcher. He has stated in his own words that when he decided to audition for the show, he did not approach it casually. He sat down and studied Simon Cowell, watching hours of footage from competition formats including American Idol, paying close attention to which vocal performances had visibly moved Cowell over the years, and identifying which songs the judge had publicly named as personal favorites. What he landed on was Purple Rain by Prince, specifically because he had gathered enough evidence to be confident it was among Cowell's most beloved songs. This matters more than it might initially seem. Purple Rain is not a safe, crowd-pleasing choice. It is a technically unforgiving song with an enormous emotional arc, one that requires a singer to stay restrained and almost broken through the first two-thirds before releasing everything in the final section. Performing it badly does not result in polite applause and a gentle rejection. Performing it badly in front of an audience that reveres the original results in something considerably more uncomfortable. Matty had spent 4 years at a world-class conservatoire learning how to manage that kind of risk on a stage. He chose the song anyway, deliberately, because he had decided that if he was going to get one more chance at a televised platform, he was going to use everything he had learned about the man holding the buzzer to engineer the moment. On March 28, 2026, Matty Juniosa walked onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent Series 19 as an unknown quantity. He told the judges, Cowell, Amanda Holden, Alicia Dixon, and new panel member KSI, that he had spent years believing he would always be the loser of every singing competition he entered. He said it plainly, the way a person says a thing when they have already made a decision to stop hiding it. Then he sang. He held back through the first half of Purple Rain, keeping the vocal quiet and almost fractured, in the style Prince used on the original studio recording. Then he opened up. According to the Britain's Got Talent wiki and widely circulated video footage, the audience began rising to their feet before the song was finished. KSI called his personality outstanding and added that the moment he lifted the microphone from its stand, he became a superstar. Cowell told him it was the biggest reaction the show had produced from any contestant so far that season. The audience began chanting for the golden buzzer. Cowell pressed it. Gold confetti fell, and Matty became the first act of the entire season to receive Simon Cowell's golden buzzer, earning an automatic spot in the semifinals. He stood on the stage with both hands on his head, looking as though he had forgotten how to breathe. He was not performing that reaction. It was the expression of a man who had spent a decade building toward one moment and had just watched it arrive. The semi-finals of Series 19 began in late April 2026, and Matty returned with a performance that made his audition look like a rehearsal. He took on the stage with a powerful rendition of Aerosmith's Dream On, accompanied by a backup choir, earning applause from the audience and praise from all 4 judges. Alicia Dixon called the performance effortlessly sensational. Amanda Holden went further. She told the production team that if she did not press her golden buzzer, the decision would go to the audience, and she was not willing to let that happen, then hit the buzzer herself, sending Matty directly through to the grand final. He became the first act in the 2026 series to receive 2 golden buzzers. In the full context of the show's history, he was only the 4th act in Britain's Got Talent history to receive the golden buzzer twice across any version of the competition. The clip of Amanda Holden's semi-final buzzer move spread faster than the audition had. In the Philippines, it landed in WhatsApp groups before most British viewers had finished processing what they had watched. Filipino fans who had voted him out of Idol Philippines 6 years earlier were now reposting side-by-side videos. Matty leaving the Idol Philippines stage with the lowest score in the top 12, next to Matty standing in golden confetti on British television for the second time in a single season. On May 30, 2026, Britain's Got Talent Series 19 held its grand final. Matty performed Nothing Compares to You, the Sinead O'Connor recording of a song originally written by Prince, on a specially constructed stage shaped like the letter M, accompanied by a gospel choir. He delivered the classic ballad from a smaller raised platform atop the main stage, with the choir building behind him. He finished the competition in 4th place. The season was won by the Hawkstone Farmers Choir, a 34-strong group whose run through the competition had been built on themes of community, resilience, and mental health. Drone display act Celestial finished as runner-up, and dog and handler dance duo Anastasia and Salsa placed 3rd. Matty's response to the result, shared on Instagram, was characteristically direct. Me knowing I placed 4th on BGT, which is Beyoncé's birthday, and I'm very proud of that. That sentence tells you more about who he is than any highlight reel. He placed 4th in one of the most watched talent competitions in British television history, in a country that was not his own, in a language that was not the one he grew up speaking, competing against acts that had the full advantage of British cultural familiarity. And his public response was essentially, I know exactly what this was worth, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. It would be easy to frame Matty Juniosa's BGT journey as a feel-good underdog narrative. The orphan dream, the years in the cold, the borrowed suit, the golden confetti. Television is very good at packaging that kind of story, and Britain's Got Talent in particular has built its entire brand identity around it. But the more accurate frame is this. Matty's story is about what deliberate, sustained reinvention actually looks like when it is not being edited into a 3-minute segment. He did not stumble onto that stage in 2026 through luck or timing. He arrived there because he had made a sequence of decisions, leaving a label, leaving a country, working in a restaurant kitchen while training at a world-class conservatoire, studying a television judge the way a chess player studies an opponent, each of which reduced the role of chance and increased the role of preparation. The golden buzzer was not an accident. It was the outcome of a plan built across years. There is also something specific and significant about what his BGT run meant to the Filipino diaspora. The Philippines produces an extraordinary number of highly skilled performing artists, many of whom find their careers capped by the structural realities of a domestic entertainment market. When Matty stood on that stage in London and earned a standing ovation, it did not read, to Filipino audiences at home and abroad, as a feel-good moment. It read as evidence. Evidence that the preparation was worth it, that the sacrifice made sense, that the voice that had been told no by a national audience in 2019 was genuinely, verifiably world-class. The Drag Race Philippines connection carries the same weight. Kapangarahan, recorded by 3 young men who had all been cut from the same competition in the wake of Matty's public elimination, became the soundtrack to one of Southeast Asia's biggest queer cultural moments. That particular thread of his career is one almost no English-language profile of Matty will ever fully understand or explain. But in the communities where it happened, it landed like a quiet proof of something important. That talent which gets discarded by one system has a habit of finding its way into another system's defining moments. Matty Juniosa is 27 years old.